Butter. How do you live without it? My God, what would popcorn, bread, or anything I eat be without it? So let's recognize this yellow monolith of silky goodness. Essential survival food, enricher of life, the one who has a devoted tray in everyone's fridge. Today I'm talking about butter. How it's made, who makes it, how is milk made, and how it's changed over time. But before I jump in, do me a huge favor and subscribe to the Come to Cheesus channel. Jesus will bless you for this. And let me know in the comments below what other food topics you would like to explore. Okay, this hot knife video is gonna cut straight through this butter. In the easiest terms, to make butter, you agitate cream. Not quite like agitating your sibling, this is more skimming, churning, and working the butter, which I don't know, maybe is how you annoy your sibling. Not sure, I'm not one to judge. But to make butter, first is skimming the cream from milk. Cream is the higher fat layer skimmed from the top of milk. If you're making butter the old school way, when milk was left out overnight, the next day the cream would rise to the top. And yeah, that's where that expression comes from. Next comes churning. Churning is agitating the cream. During churning, fat membranes break open, and all those exposed fatty little fats will clump together and form butter. Next, you work that butter. Hey! Yeah, work that butter! Where it is rinsed, pressed, kneaded, and squeezed. This helps butter's texture and durability, making it easier to spread or travel long distances. While this was all done by hand and simple churns for the large part of our history, today, everyday butter making is almost completely a mechanized process. We get milk that makes butter from goats, sheep, cows, large buffaloes, and yaks. They're all ruminants. They're all processing their nutrients in a similar way. But since the majority of butter produced comes from a cow, I'm going to focus on moo-moos today. Sorry, other farm animals. One day I'll talk about you as well. Cows are built to graze. They use their Gene Simmons-like long tongue and the bottom of their jaw to pull grass and vegetation. Weird thing, cows don't even have upper teeth. They're much like my Uncle Gilbert without his false teeth. Instead of upper chompers, cows have a gummy dental pad. One misconception you hear is that a cow has 4 stomachs. In actuality, they just have one stomach, but it has 4 chambers. Let's go into these chambers and see how they do it. The first chamber is the rumen, and it's like the bag of your push mower. It's packed full of grass, clippings, and whatever this beast has been munching on. There are muscles surrounding the rumen which help move the feed around. The inner lining of the rumen is lined with gastric juices. These juices are splashing against these munchies, chemically breaking down everything.
All that enter the rumen dome will get juiced.
And there are billions upon billions of microbes creating fermentation. The rumen is kind of like a cow's version of a kombucha tank. Gloom, gloom, gloom. So, if all be nice and fibrous in there, then the feed moves on to the next chamber. It goes into the reticulum. The reticulum senses fibrousness, then forms a ball of fibrous feed. That ball then gets burped up, and then the cow chews on it one more time. This is known as cud, and cud chewing takes hours. With all that chewing and spitting up, cows must have been first basemen in another life. These ladies use their molars to shear those fibers to break them open and create more surface area. That's a lot of saliva splooshing around in there. Cows produce 10 to 30 gallons of saliva every day. That's a lot of but it's all necessary. If you don't put this cow drool in between the microbes and the fibers, then you don't get the microbial help. And you wouldn't be cleaning the nutrients out of it that you would if the cow wasn't ruminating. So, if they do that, they'll get ground down a little bit more finely so then it can pass. Going past the reticulum, it gets to the omasum. The omasum is sort of like a place where dehydration happens, and then it moves on to the abomasum. The abomasum is most like a human stomach here. So the cow goes through all of that, chewing, drooling, burping up, chewing again, just to get food into a human-like stomach. From there, the cow digests it, and the nutrients are absorbed in the blood system. So remember all those happy cow commercials? While yes, it is marketing bullshit at its finest, but it is true a cow has to be happy for rumination to happen, and a cow won't do it if they're stressed out. So you gotta keep your gal happy. A nice, relaxed, happy cow is a ruminating cow. And a ruminating cow is a cow that's actively making milk that's digesting their feed, sending nutrients through the blood system, and hooking them together into fats and proteins. Today, cows typically get milked twice a day and produce about 50 gallons gallons of milk every day, and they lactate for around 300 days a year. Compare this to a sheep, which produces under 5 gallons of milk a day, and produces milk for only 180 days. You'll just simply understand the economics of why cows are our main milk makers. Cows spend half the day foraging and grazing and half the day ruminating. While there are different breeds of cows whose quality and quantity will differ breed to breed, most butter you'll find at grocery stores come from Holstein cows. Out of the 3 most used breeds of cow in the United States, they produce the most milk. But keep in mind, that doesn't necessarily mean the best milk or butter though. The molecules in milk need protein, which can be found in grass and grain that the cows feed on. The better quality of grass and soil, the better the nutrients that the cows can absorb, the better the butter. Grass, and particular new grass, has a mass amount of beta-carotene in it. This antioxidant has a pigment in it which makes it yellow. During digestion, the beta-carotene gets absorbed and stored into the fat of the cow. That fat eventually becomes part of the butter fat of the milk, which is why butter is yellow and not white. But you might be asking yourself, well, why the hell is milk white? First of all, calm down there, fussy britches. And secondly, there's a white membrane that covers each yellow-tinted fat globule in milk. However, some butter colors from other ruminants will vary, and that's based on how they store fat. But with a cow, when that milk is churned during the butter making process, it breaks that membrane, and like a straw house blown by the big bad wolf, those wee little pigments are exposed. Much like cheese, butter came into existence during the Neolithic era, somewhere around 9,000 years ago. This was not too far after humans began domesticating animals, sheep and goats being the first animals to be domesticated, as well as being the same animal milk to create the first butter. While nobody can take credit for butter's origins, there's a legend about it, and it's similar to cheese's origins, in that somebody left their animal skin pouch that was used for milk storage overnight. The next day, when they took that pouch with them to pasture, while they were walking, it made the milk move around, and when they looked down into the pouch, they found butter along with buttermilk. Butter and cheese have some similarities, but one of the main differences is that butter is a mechanical process while cheese is a chemical process. Moving forward in time around 2500 BC, the Sumerians came along and created a tool called a dash that is pretty much a plunger used for churning butter. Moving forward, the rise of the Iron Age facilitated the expansion of butter's reach. Egyptians took it to a whole new level, cosmetically using it on their recently deceased, stuffing some in the mouth to make the cheeks look fuller and the body more alive. With medicinal uses, you would think that religious uses for butter would be the next logical step. And you're right. Sumerians worship the god Dumuzi, who is a dairy shepherd. Hindus believe that ghee, a close relative of butter, was hidden in milk, the same way that God is hidden in nature. Abraham in the Bible even serves a group of angels butter in the book of Genesis. In 400 BC, Druids would bury butter in bogs for both preservation as well as pagan offerings. Romans looked down on eating butter as something barbarians would only eat, but they used it medicinally. While the Romans did view butter as lesser than, the church helped change the course and popularize it as butter became an acceptable use for oil during fasting. A large portion of butter's history has been synonymous with women and dairymaids. Making cheese and butter was symbolic to women as a sign of fertility, mothering, and breastfeeding. As such, making cheese or butter for the family became part of a woman's chores. As city living grew, so did relying on those producing reliable foods that could be preserved and, well, that tasted good too. Dairymaids established themselves as artisan producers in markets. They helped with the standards of quality while also making consistent, tasty butter. Dairymaids as a profession was respected, and any woman knowing how to make butter always had the ability to find a job. The single biggest change for food in general, but butter specifically, has been industrialization. Shortly after pasteurization was discovered in 1862, Gustave de Lavelle invented the centrifugal cream separator in 1878. And this is the part of the story where it sounds similar to Paul Bunyan. Paul and his axe just couldn't keep up with the chainsaw. Compared to traditional methods of waiting a day for cream to rise, the countless hours of manual labor it took to produce small amounts of butter, machines could churn out way more butter in just a few hours. While more butter could be created, it wasn't necessarily better butter. De Lavalle's invention was the spark that led to the rise of commercial creameries. At the same time, refrigeration and refrigerated train cars were being introduced, meaning more butter could be sent out to further reaches of the continental United States. But this also changed the industry for dairymaids, who thrived before the Industrial Revolution and then withered after after its introduction, and along with some classic chauvinism and propaganda portraying dairymaids suddenly as country bumpkins or hicks, women who dominated butter making for centuries were outflanked by men. The industrial age had arrived. Men and their machines took over butter making like some kind of dairy Skynet and drove women out of the industry. Dun 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 dun. Dun 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 dun. Originally made from lard or animal fat, margarine came into existence in 1869. Chemist Hippolyte Maige-Morès came up with the butter substitute by mixing milk and salt with beef lard. At a fraction of the cost to make compared to butter, made butter producers collectively lose their shit. The dairy industry ran smear campaigns, lobbied politicians. The Supreme Court even ruled that states could ban colored margarine. Margarine was on the ropes, but two minor historical events happened: the Great Depression and World War II. These two brief events gave the I can't believe it's not butter a much-needed reprieve. Thanks to rationing and its ability to be stored and not spoil, margarine was freed from its legal purgatory and government regulation. Today, margarine is still around, but since the 80s have long switched out of the animal fat in favor of vegetable oil. By the late 1940s, a machine called the Butterator, which could produce a ton of butter every hour, arrived and furthered butter's mechanized domination production to what it is today. While our culture is dominated by industrial producers, there has been a recent rise in artisanal butter. As with the case with beer, wine, whiskey, and cheese, butter has had a similar small batch resurgence in the United States. No artisanal producers have had more of a unique impact than Animal Farm Creamery in Vermont. Using techniques from the 19th century, the Jersey's cow milk is skimmed, churned, and kneaded, all by hand. This small batch farm is hand-making some of the best butters out there and has caught the attention of Thomas Keller. You know, the guy, world-famous Michelin star chef, Mr. French Laundry and Per Se. It's really hard to get your hands on this butter. Luckily for me, I got some. So this is about $60 a pound. On the tongue, this is sweeter than most butters. Texture-wise, it is light, but when you get a piece of bread with it, it really flaunts its richness. While this isn't the butter that most people can eat on a daily basis, I do recommend that you find some good local producers, the mom and pop butter makers out there, who are making some great quality and delicious butter. Treat yourself to the good life. It's not butter, it's butter. I'm gonna go eat more of this now. So what do you think? Do you have a go-to butter? Let me know in the comments below, and while you're at it, check out some of my other videos on Come to Cheesus.